Welcome, everybody. My name is Kim McKeon, and I am the chairman of the Institute for Global Education. And I want to welcome everybody that came tonight. And I am here tonight to tell you that this is an honor for the Institute for Global Education to partner with the City of Grand Rapids for Census 2020. And I'm here tonight to also introduce to you the coordinator of the 2020 census for the census for the City of Grand Rapids, and that is Kathy Harris. And Kathy Harris is no stranger to public service. She has stepped up to the plate many times, has advocated for voting rights. She has had a passion for youth and has worked in many different nonprofits and communities working for human rights and also for equity. And tonight I want to introduce to you Kathy Harris.
Thank you, Kim. I was beginning to wonder who she was talking about. Thank you. Thank you for coming out this evening. We are looking forward to having a very successful program, but just getting the information out to the community for the Census 2020 is very important. We have a great panel, and so I'm challenging you all to ask them questions so that they can answer those questions so that we can make sure everybody understands how serious this issue is, how important it is for everyone to be counted. This is a very vital year for us to make sure that those numbers are there. So we're counting on you all to get that information out to the community. So I'll start at the far end and ask Principal Michael Perez to introduce himself and tell us a little bit about what he does.
My name is Mike Perez. I'm the principal at Burton Middle School in Grand Rapids, Michigan, not far from here. I've been with the GRPS for 4 years, 2 years at Westwood, and I'm going into my second year there at Burton Middle School. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Buenas noches, mi nombre es Adnoris Torres. Good evening, my name is Adnoris Torres. I am the Executive Director of Your Hispanic Center of Western Michigan. The Hispanic Center of Western Michigan, our mission is to educate, advocate, and empower the Latino community, but not just the Latino community, all communities in our area of service, which are Kent County and the 6 surrounding counties. So thank you for welcoming us here tonight and looking forward to the conversation.
Hello, bonjour, soyez le bienvenu. Since we're starting with our languages. My name is Ruben Njawaro. I am originally from Chad, Africa. I've been in Grand Rapids about almost 8 years. Really love this community. This community has really welcomed me in. I've done a number of things. My recent work was with men and women returning from incarceration, so I really have a passion for that, going into prisons and jails and then helping them reenter society. And I love the work that I've been recruited by the city of Grand Rapids to do the census. I think it's really important, and so my role is to work with the African Resource Center, which I am on staff part-time, to reach the African community and underrepresented groups.
All right. Good evening. My name is Lou Canfield. I work for the City of Grand Rapids. My day job there is I manage the Development Center, which is the permitting and inspection group. So you may have seen me in that capacity at some point. You more likely have seen an inspector for the city, and we hope you've had good experiences with that group. And in connection with the census, I'm the Complete Count Committee coordinator. The Complete Count Committee is a group of 70 people, community leaders led by the mayor, and that group started meeting more than a year ago and is really focused on educating and motivating the community around the 2020 census, helping people understand why it's important and how to participate. So that's been my special project in recent months. And I've been working with Kathy and Ruben closely as we plan this complete count effort.
Namaste and welcome everybody. My name is Sagar Dangal. Today I'm representing Bhutanese community of Michigan. It's fairly a new organization, I think. Not a lot of people have heard it. I'm the vice president of the organizations. This is the nonprofit organization established by immigrant refugees who came to America from Nepal. These people were originally from Bhutan, but they lived in Nepal as refugees. So after living there for 15 years, they got an opportunity to be resettled in the United States and many other developed countries like Australia, UK, and there are 8 different countries. So the people who came to America and who chose to come to Michigan or Lansing or Grand Rapids, starting from 2008, the people came together and decided to establish this nonprofit to help people like me who came to America as a refugee with no clue what the America is or was, and my parents who never went to school. There are thousands of folks who had no idea what America was like, and in fact, because people were scared to come to America because it was so different than what I grew up in, what my parents grew up in, and what the culture I was in. So with that in mind, the people came together to establish this organization to help each other out. We're not aiming too big. We just wanted to help each other out. That was the main goal. And as we go forward, we have been running this organization with no grant, I guess, except grant we got for this census. But besides that, we have all full-time volunteers working to help the Vietnamese community at the moment. And if we get the right funding and if we get to what we want to do, we definitely want to extend or expand from the Vietnamese community. But at the moment, we are focusing on the Vietnamese, who are Vietnamese and Nepali, which the population is about. This isn't guess. This isn't guesstimate. 8 to 10,000 Vietnamese in Grand Rapids, Kenwood, Caledonia, the sisters country around the Grand Rapids. There are about 8 to 10,000 immigrant. I want to call them immigrant. I don't want to call them refugees. They wanted to come to America because they don't want to be a refugee anymore. So resettled immigrants in this country or in this city. Thank you.
Oh, awesome. Thank you. So let's get started. Everybody ready? Got questions, things in mind? We can challenge our audience, challenge our panel. We are ready to. I would like to start with Lou. Because of the historical problems that we've had in the past with counting, if you could give a little information about the past, the census 2010, and how it was affected or how brought us to where we are now with the Complete Count Committee.
Sure. So the 2010 census in Grand Rapids had a 77% self-response rate, which means people received at that time a paper form, and they either with or without a reminder filled out that paper form, mailed it back to the Census Bureau, and as a result, the Census Bureau didn't send what they call enumerators, the people who go door to door to count. They didn't send those enumerators to that 77%. So they did have to go out and knock on doors to count the remainder. And the concern that we have with the current census in comparison to the last one is there are a few challenges. One is it's the first online, at least initial online response option census. So in the past, the survey was a paper form. This time, our understanding is the Census Bureau will mail out a card or a brief letter explaining how to go online and respond to the census, and that'll be the initial preferred option. And of course, not everybody has a great internet connection. Not everybody likes to use the internet. Some people may not trust submitting personal information online. So we know just the fact that it's going to be initially online is a challenge. So a person who doesn't respond online will be mailed the paper form. So you don't have to do it online if that's not your preference. So there's that challenge, and then there's the challenge of, for me, I get a lot of surveys, I get a lot of requests for information, and to some people this may just feel like another thing that's coming at them asking for information. So we're going to explain more tonight why this one is so important in comparison to those others, and why it's worth people's time to take the time to respond. And then, of course, there's fear. There seems to be more mistrust of government generally, and probably of the federal government specifically, which is the level of government that administers the census. And we know that some groups of people are more fearful than others, and one that I'll note, of course, is the immigrant community and people who have immigrants in their households. So, recent news in over the past year has, in connection with the census, but also in other areas, has made people understandably nervous. So we know those are some key challenges. The census is no less important than it's been for the past few centuries. It's probably even more important now than it was, but we have these challenges. We know we have to push back against those.
Thank you. Michael, can you talk about how the census affects the students, the parents, in the school system?
Well, I think firsthand, the biggest way is the school system is about I believe we're the third largest recipient of funds that we would end up getting from, raising by via the census and kind of knowing who's there. And that really impacts our students in particular because a lot of those funds end up going into Title I and Title III, which is really directed at students of poverty, our English language learners. So those tend to be a lot of our immigrant students. And then Burton, we are a cultural center, and there are 16 different languages represented within our building. And so those funds directly help me pay for my reading teachers, pay for my ELL teacher. So it directly impacts students and their learning. And then ultimately, obviously, the bigger picture is that's their future. And so it's extremely important. Now I know in addition to that, what was just said in terms of that fear, there definitely is that okay, who do I trust? Who do I give my information to? Especially when so many of our families, their stories are firsthand in terms of whether they're first-generation Americans or not, and how that impacts whether, well, if I say this, is this going to impact my family makeup there in my home? So it's when you add on the difficulty of learning a language, and then add on the stress of just I guess the political atmosphere or just within the community, it's a lot. And so making sure that they participate, it impacts our students and just gives them that opportunity to, be taught.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Bowl, can you talk about your community? You are the director for the Hispanic Center. You see people coming in and going out for the different programs that you have available. Can you talk about that and how the census helped those programs and help your community?
Well, there's been a lot of work over the last couple of years in order to get to the point that we are today. So voters, not politicians, and all of the work that's been done to redistrict is something that's going to affect our population as we grow. So we are expected to grow by about 15% by 2040. So those numbers reflect the school system. Those numbers reflect our community. As those persons come into the Hispanic Center of Western Michigan, the funding that goes along with that is directly tied into the census, the civic engagement that is seen by our community. All of those programs and perspectives that we need in our center, whether it be documented populations, undocumented populations, the African American and Latino communities have been historically undercounted. So how do we overcome that? The Hispanic Center of Western Michigan has an initiative where we will be a census hub. We will be a technology hub where persons can come, fill out the census without the fear of persons going to their homes. We know that there is an incredible amount of stress on our communities right now. So by being that hub, by being that convener of persons that a center is supposed to be, we will have the technology available. We will have 2 computers on our main floor. We will have 2 computers on our second floor that will serve those persons as they come into a safe environment, into an open environment. We'll be able to explain what the census is, why it is so important, all of the different ways that it will be impacting their lives. So as soon as the census opens, they will have a place where they can come and feel comfortable in engaging with our duty as citizens to be able to engage in this really, really important piece of civic engagement.
Thank you. If anyone has any, excuse me, have any questions as we go, please raise your hand, or there's two. Can you write them? Here, let's do it this way. Can we pass you the mic as we go? Is that okay with recording? Okay. Okay, well, I'll get her. Okay, so let's come back while she's getting the cards out. Come back to Ruben. Our first experience, as once we were hired from the city as the coordinator and the ambassadors, our first assignment, or their first assignment as ambassadors, was to attend the Grand Valley American Indian Powwow. I think it was a special year for them, 50th anniversary or so. So I asked the ambassadors if they would go over there, and Ruben was one of those that went. Can you tell us your experience at that weekend?
Man, it was phenomenal. Just admit my ignorance of the American Indian community just floored me, because it was an opportunity to really delve into a community outside of my own that I'm familiar with. And sometimes I think what really, for me personally, was fascinating is that I may come from an underrepresented community here in Grand Rapids, but sometimes we need to also learn about each other. And as Bo also was saying, my mom is actually taking classes at the Hispanic Center as an African woman, doing and learning with the community there. And so sometimes our communities, in order to be, I think, a lot stronger, at times need to experience those exchanges amongst ourselves. So that was a great experience. I'm going to go back next year, and I'm going to dance with them in the circle, because it was phenomenal. I really enjoyed it. It really also gave me an understanding of the diversity that exists throughout the United States, but also within this community, within Grand Rapids, and that everybody has something to offer. And so that's why the census is very important, that we are able to count every single individual, because their contributions have a rippling effect on other people. And so that's one of the messages we try to get across to people, is that, you know, you being counted actually brings dollars and support that can directly affect your community, but also has an impact on other communities. So in this, we're all in this together. And that's one of the important messages we try to get across to people.
Okay, thank you. Segar, we met we had a meeting. I met with their organization, and we were talking about how our census committee could work with their organization. Can you talk about some of the things that we're planning, but the reasons why we're planning that way to get your community to come together?
Oh, absolutely. But I think even before I go there, I think it's very important to get the background of it. The census has in past been very important part in our life as a Bhutanese. The reason I say that is because my parents, they say the main reason my parents had to leave Bhutan was because of census. The Bhutan government did a census. I don't know the exact year. I think it's around 1985 or so. They did a census, and then they categorized the people from 1 to 7 different categories, depending on whether they were born in Bhutan or Nepal, or they came from India, even if they were mixed, meaning being a dad from Bhutan, mom from India, and their kids being different categories. So I can't even explain. There are 7 different categories, and dad could be in category 1, and kids could be category 3, and mom could be category 7. So people from category 1 can stay in, they are considered the pure Bhutanese, they can stay. Other category 2 in between, 4, anything above 4 has to leave.
Wow.
Okay, so imagine being 7 different categories in the same community, same family, and then some of them has to leave the country, which means technically you're not going to let half of your family go. All your family has to go. There are other reasons after that, but that was the main cause why people had to leave. So because of that effect, my parents and a lot of people from our community, they fear census. And I'll give you my story a little bit. I came to America in 2009. And before 2020, 2010 was the time when there was another census coming up. And when we were told, or I learned in Nepal before we came here, that you can't give your personal information to people you don't know, right? You can't give your personal information to a stranger. And out of nowhere, after a year I'm in the United States, people are in my door asking for my family members and how old I am and things that normally I don't want to give to strangers. And then I know from my community, I would tell you back in 2010, maybe 5% of them filled out the census. Maybe 5%. Why? No education, right? People started coming to America as a resettled refugees from Nepal was 2008. So we came in 9, and people continue to come after that. But within the 2 years in the state, people are still trying to figure out things around and barely being able to speak English. I struggled high school. I remember those tough days, right? So point is, without a very good awareness and education about census, what it does and how census is not used against you, how census is actually, the purpose of census is only to count only and not to any way use against you, is very, very needed message in my community. When I say this community, talking to the Vietnamese in particular in general, because I don't have a lot of knowledge and experience to talk about other community at the moment, but I'm focusing on the Vietnamese again. I'm focusing on my parents. My neighbors that I know we came as I did. It's very important they know that census is only for head count. Census is not going to be used, again, repeating, because it's very important that census is not going to be used against them, and how important it is. It's not an optional. Census is needed in our community because it defines how much money come to our city, right? So it's very important, but also a lot of people are fearful and scared to fill it out. So as a business community and working with the Kathy, we are trying to bridge this gap. What we have done so far is we have been to churches run by Vietnamese and Nepali community and talk to them, hey, census is coming up. Our experience with census in past wasn't great, but hey, we have learned something new that we want to share, how there's nothing to fear about census. We have been to the Hindu community within the Vietnamese community, because Vietnamese community is pretty diverse. It has Christian people, religious, non-religious, Christian, Hindus, Kirati, like all people you can think of, I guess, from the ethnic part of Nepal. So what we are doing is we're going to the group where they meet, this religious group, and talk to them, talk to their leaders, and try to aware them how the census can't be used against them and why it is important and why we have to fill it out. We are also, with Kathy, with the City of Grand Rapids, trying to organize a cultural event where hundreds of people come in. We can use that event as a singing and dancing event, and also use that event to aware people about census again. So it is very important. Vietnamese have a clear understanding of census, and we are doing our best. The Vietnamese community is doing best with a very, very, very minimum grant provided by United Way, and it's very minimum. It's not going to be enough, but we have been volunteer for years and years now, and we'll continue to be volunteers. I don't think we'll get a lot of grants for this, but I think I myself, being part of this community, I think it's my duty to help other fellow members of the community, and I'm not asking any money. I'm doing this voluntarily.
Thank you. Lou, can you talk about the money? Talk about how much each person's worth and how it...
Each person is priceless.
Okay. Well, how much is the government going to give?
How much is the government going to give? Yeah. So there are two primary uses of census data. So one that's been talked about a little bit, or at least alluded to, is it's used to, the count is used to allocate political representation. So the number of members in the U.S. House that each state has is determined by its share of the overall population as counted in the census. So Michigan, I think, has 13 members in the U.S. House now, and that'll either stay the same or may go down by one because the country's population is growing as ours grows a little bit as a state. So it's used for that purpose, used to allocate members of the state house, state senate, geographically. But then what you're getting at is there's a lot of federal grant money So one of the major grants you've probably heard of is community development block grants. So, that's one that neighborhood associations receive money from. Some community organizations, other community organizations receive money through that program. But that's just one of a lot of programs, hundreds of them, that add up to almost $700 billion a year that is allocated according to the census count. It's around $1,800 per person per year, so that flows into our community for every person counted. And of course, we only do this once every 10 years, so you do the math. Every person counted over the next 10 years, that's $18,000 that's going to flow into our community. And it doesn't come to the city primarily. It goes to health centers, schools, nutrition programs, home weatherization, energy efficiency programs, goes to different transit and road construction projects. So lots of things that help lots of people, especially some of the more vulnerable people in our community, that's funded in a way that's tied directly to the census count. So it's important for those two main reasons, and there's a lot of money that is tied to this.
And we need that money, so we gotta make sure everybody gets counted. Right? That's our responsibility, is to go in wherever those pockets of people are, we have to find them. So we need your help in doing that. We have a question in the audience.
Actually, I have 5, if that's okay.
Ooh.
I
Okay.
just want to make sure that I get my questions answered. This one goes to Bo. Bo, what exactly the Hispanic Center is doing to communicate to our community the services that you guys will be providing for the census? How are we going to make sure that people in our community know that you guys are going to be providing computers and maybe have interpreters there or translators there to help them understand some of the questions? How are you guys going to do that?
So that's been the focus of the Hispanic Center of Western Michigan for the last year. Prior to receiving any funding, we knew that this work needed to be done. So what have we done? We've started to utilize all of the technology that we have at the center. The screen that we have, as soon as you walk into the center, if any of you haven't been to the center, I invite you all to come by. We have a big screen that just rotates all of the different events that we have at the center, in our surrounding area, and with our partner agencies. So that has had census messaging on it for the last couple of months, making sure that we have accessibility in English and in Spanish. We have partnered with the City of Grand Rapids to make sure that we have posters that speak to the importance of the center and the importance of us being a census hub and the importance of the census. So we've had those out in community. We've been placing those in different businesses, partnering agencies all over the City of Grand Rapids. We've had, the United Way has provided us with different flyers that we've been able to provide to all of the different members of the community that come into the center. We have a sandwich board that we place outside that's in English and in Spanish that has that. So depending on whether it's technologically, whether it's visibly, whether it's a handout, we've also done a lot of messaging on social media to be able to send that message out into the community, why the census is so important. Daniela Rojas Cortez has been doing an amazing job. She's one of our staff members there that does a lot of our social media work. And she has been messaging daily, countless times, making sure that that messaging is out. So inside of the center, outside of the center, partnering agencies, English, Spanish, in languages that we know representation does matter. So when you have something in a language that speaks to the community, that is visible to the community, when you're doing that work, that's what really matters, and that's what's going to get persons that trust our agencies to come out. We've had a lot over the last couple of years. We had a really bad experience with DACA and how those numbers were used against the community. So we have that to overcome, making sure that every time that we speak, and Lou and I have had these kind of conversations candidly, to be able to say there is this fear, we have to address this fear, and we have to make sure that these numbers will not be used against our community and our population. That way, that population that is really affected, and all populations that are historically marginalized, understand what these numbers are for, how these numbers will be used, and what that effect will be.
Okay, thank you. Do I give the mic to somebody
Nope,
else?
go ahead.
Keep
You have
going?
4 more
Okay.
questions.
So now I'm really interested to know how the school is actually using the kids in the school district to communicate to the parents about the census, and knowing that a lot of the parents in our Hispanic community, they don't have the level of education what the school is actually doing to help the kids communicate to the parents the importance of the census.
Well, first and usually foremost, there are little messengers in terms of, hey, we put something in their hand and then off it goes into, which is, for a lot of our community members, a more reliable way versus how connected they are, or even, whether they trust technology. So there's that quick little connection. In addition to that, some of the funds that come from the, that would end up trickling down. For example, this past Wednesday I did a family recognition academic night. And what that does, it's funded through Title, so I get to use these funds to draw parents in. And it's what I think it's actually been quite moving. One of the coolest things I've seen as the principal there at Burton is how much a lot of these parents trust me with some scenarios or situations. I'm like, okay, I don't know if I know how to really handle that when I'm touched that you trust me with this. But even today, a parent, and there was an immigration issue, and I need my son's grades, I need all these things, because they were kind of getting in position to do that. So by having the funds to hold a family event, that gives me direct access, and they see me honoring their young person, giving them an award for doing their work, getting on the honor roll. It just gives me a closer connection to talk to that parent and say, hey, this is important because we get these funds, or it helps us give your son or daughter the academic supports that they need. So it's the messengers going out. It is the direct communication with the family members when they come in, using these title funds to hold, a family night or any family event for that matter. Did that cover it?
Yeah, it did. Thank you so much. Now, my next question is for the city of Grand Rapids. How you guys are, and this is for Lou. Lou, how are you guys getting your employees excited about the census so that way they could also be a representative of the census? Because I think this is going to take a whole village to get this done. And you guys employ over 1,000 people, I think, at the city of Grand Rapids. Yeah. So I think you have the majority of the people of the city right there. How are you guys going to get them excited about the census so that way everything trickles down?
Yeah, so the census takes place, most people will see that mailing prompting them to go online and fill out the census next March. So we are just ramping up internally in terms of getting the word out among kind of the broader cross-section of city employees. So that is coming. But our focus really is going to be on the city employees that have the most direct customer-citizen interaction. And so, you can think of like if you've gone to pay a bill at the customer service counter on Monroe, that'll be a key point. We're going to work through the water system because most people in the city get a water bill.
So pay their taxes too.
Pay their taxes. So we're looking at all those ways of getting information out in the next mailing. And then we're also working with the county because the city provides some direct services, but the county also provides a lot of direct services. So we do have a partnership with the county and think of places like the county health department where they're going to interact with lots of people. So like we're ramping that up. There's a timing question to this too. Like this comes in March, so we haven't been like putting up billboards or doing a lot of mailings up to this point because there's kind of a too early in terms of like you don't necessarily want to do a direct mailer 6 months early, but 2-3 months early seems about right. So that's coming.
Okay, good. This other question is for you too, Lou. Sorry.
Yeah, that's all right.
I really want to know what are the measures that the city of Grand Rapids is taking to really protect the undocumented members of our community. I know that some questions have been removed, but I really want to know, I want to make sure that there's some intentionality because we have a lot of undocumented members of our community and they're really scared. And we are prepared to put our faces out there on behalf of the city, on behalf of our community. but I just need to be completely certain that there's not going to be any ramification of this census back to our members.
Sure. Well, the city's effort is, we have confidence to be part of this effort because we have researched and have confidence in the safeguards that the government has put in place around census data. So it's been mentioned that, in other countries, censuses are used to gather information for different purposes. And I know that people have some fears that maybe that's what our census is being used for, but when you take into account that, one, our system of government and our legal system prevented the citizenship question from even being on the form. So, yeah. It was a relief to us. I mean, that is something that certainly would have had a depressing effect on the count. So, so the system worked in terms of removing that question. The law is such that census data can only be used publicly for statistical purposes. So. Federal law says that your individual response, no matter who you are, is confidential. And even the people who go door to door, if you don't send in the form, they are sworn to keep that data confidential. They have to take an oath to do that. If they were to violate that and to be held accountable, the fines and prison time that would attend to that for them is pretty steep. So there are all these protections in place, and I should mention individual census responses can't even be released in a court proceeding. So, census data doesn't get subpoenaed, for example. It is not subject to that. So like we've looked into these protections, and we also know that there are a lot of watchdog agencies that are interested in the census, that are watching the Census Bureau to make sure that these kinds of policies are adhered to. So I guess what I'm saying is we have looked into this carefully, consulted with some experts, and we have confidence to be a leader in this because we believe strongly that it is safe.
Okay. So then with that said, when are we going to put a video together and all these languages talking to people about the importance of the census and then share that information with each of our organizations so we could actually be the mean of distributing this information to ensure that everyone gets counted?
So we are working on videos. We're working with a marketing firm to get those put together. I know we will have videos in English and Spanish. I think we probably will need to rely on more printed materials and word of mouth for the other languages. But the videos are, that's an important part of our effort. We're working on that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And I will say, to add to the various materials that we are putting together, we have, and they were out on the table, the palm cards that we're using to distribute among the various communities. We have had that palm card created. Right now, we're working on 7 languages. I know 5 are completely done, and we're working on 2 more. And I wanted to, with Sagar and his organization, have created, there's in Nepali language, and their pictures. What I'm trying to do is to relate the palm card to the community. So I've asked some of them for pictures of their community. So he gave me, or their organization gave us some pictures to use of some of the leaders in their organization. And we have it created, the language and the pictures on there, so that when they distribute that among their community, the people that they're distributing it to will be able to relate to and recognize their leaders. So I want to, if you can talk about that real quick, the importance of them recognizing those leaders, because they were real adamant about me using those particular pictures.
Yeah, not only leaders. On top of that, leaders is one of them, but we also want to. I think, well, like I said in the beginning, it's a diverse in terms of religion and culture within the community. So what we want to do is we want the picture of all different community within the community in the poster. Like, for example, there is a community, the religious community and non-religious community. And then the religious community, there are, as I mentioned in the beginning, Hindus are there are Christians are there are 4 or 5 churches around the Grand Rapids run by the Bhutanese. There are Buddhists, and then Kiratis. So all of this different religion is within one community. So what we wanted to do is, our approach is to reach out to this community individually. So go to their gatherings, go to their meetings, and connect with them personally. So when we go to them personally, we can present them with the templates or poster with someone from their community in it, or someone they can recognize it, so they can relate to them. So that is definitely is our goal. So hopefully, doing that, we can reduce their fear, and hopefully, again, trying to create the connection between the community, that, hey, this is not one of the big misconception in the community, including me, was census was only for the citizens, right? And then, which is not true. So again, teaching those kind of things that people didn't know or misunderstood, to telling, hey, that's, helping them with the right information and connecting them with visual pictures, word of mouth, is our goal.
Good, thank you. Were there any other questions in the audience? Okay, the lady in the blue. No, Kate, right behind you. Oh, sorry. I have the microphone. She has the microphone, yes.
So I'm going to follow up on one of Anna's questions, which is, I'm trying to, with this question, it's like I'm going to speak the elephant in the room, which is, you have reassured us that there's confidentiality, that census information won't be shared, that it's perfectly, it's as safe as you can make it. But my concern is, it's a government agency, whoever's doing the census, and ICE is also a government agency, and people want to know if ICE has access to this information, because we've heard, even locally, we've heard of the case of the city having to pay $190,000 to someone who was a citizen who was wrongfully detained by ICE. So I think that's the big question, I think, for immigrants, migrants, and even just people of color and people of Latino descent is, will I be targeted? Will this information be shared? And I guess I'd just like you to reiterate, where are the firewalls? Is that impossible? Is it impossible for someone in ICE to access this information in some nefarious way?
So I appreciate the question. I have to, for one, say, I have to rely on like those watchdog type organizations. So there are groups at universities who we actually have met with. There are civic organizations. So I rely on them, having frequently submitted Freedom of Information Act requests to the Census Bureau asking, have you released this information? Have you released this information? And they are required to answer truthfully. And as I mentioned, any release of that information, even one person's response could trigger those serious penalties for the person whoever did it. So I have to rely on other people who I have evaluated as sources that I trust to say this is unlawful and it's not happening and it won't happen because they're watching. So this isn't a question of like take the government's word for it because they tell you. It's, consider all these organizations that are watching who care very deeply about the census and all the money that flows from it and the representation that flows from it. They're watching closely. They care. I trust them and the process and conclude it's not happened and it's not going to happen.
So, thinking outside of the box of the undocumented population, historically, the African American and Latino populations as a whole have been undercounted. So these centers that are urban centers where we live, engaging I am a fair-skinned Puerto Rican citizen who does not have that fear of engaging with governmental agencies. Being able to then engage with populations that have been historically undercounted, to then say, the Hispanic Center of Western Michigan was ready to do one of two things. If the citizenship question was going to be on the census, we were going to engage with the population that was already undercounted. The citizenship question is not a part of the census, so now we can engage with a further community of those that are undocumented that are here. And being able to work with them to be able to then disseminate that information and educate the community, has been said, right? Whether it be the Arab American population, the Native American population, the Latino population, everyone needs to engage in order to have true and real representation of what our numbers are. So now that the citizenship question is not an issue, being able to engage the population as a whole, understanding that historically we have been undercounted every single census. So now it is time for us that may not have any of these issues or these worries to engage in a way that will truly represent who it is that is living in urban centers, that's living in rural centers, that's living places and spaces like Sparta and Kent City that have high Latino populations, being able to then say, okay, we need you to be counted in a way that's going to truly represent our numbers so that we can truly be represented in the civic manner, in our educational system, for the city of Grand Rapids, for the county of Kent, to really engage us as the population that does exist that has been undercounted.
Thank you.
I'd like to add, I would encourage people to go, so as Bo mentioned, no citizenship question. But I would encourage you to go to becountedgr.org, and near the very top of that page, there's a button that will take you to the census questions. And you can see the questions. There aren't very many of them. And the census will not ask for things like your social security number, your driver's license number. It doesn't ask for those kinds of things. It asks for things like your name, your marital status, you know, your age, race, Hispanic origin. It asks for information like that, but it is not going to ask you for like your income or your social security number or information like that. So if you don't know what the questions are, I would encourage you to go look at the questions so that you won't, that you won't be surprised either negatively or, I think you'll probably be pleasantly surprised at what the questions actually are.
Okay. We also were told that if if Lou were to give any information on anyone's census, that he's going to be fined over $250,000.
Well, and I'm not going to get any. I do not have access to any responses, so I want you to know that.
But seriously, though, the fine is at least $250,000, and the information from the census is not released for 72 years. So I think I'll be about 122-ish when I can see what was on 2020 census. Kate, you had a question?
Yes. I had one more question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Yes.
My other question is, will the homeless be counted? I mean, do you have to have an address,
Yeah.
or does it not matter?
You do not. The census actually has a few specialized programs. So the one we've mostly been talking about is the one where they mail out, a couple 100 million questionnaires. But the Census Bureau recognizes that there are specialized populations like college students living in dorms, seniors living in assisted living or nursing care, and of course the homeless who are not going to have a residential address. So the Census Bureau works with local communities. We've actually been working on this with them, where they want to know the places where homeless people typically gather, and then on a particular day, kind of like the United Way does, they have to do like an annual count for various grant programs. So the Census Bureau will actually have employees go there and fill out a form while they're interviewing people. So they do make a concerted effort to count the homeless.
Okay. Thank you.
Could you speak a little bit about the satellite locations? such as at the Hispanic Center, and I believe Institute for Global Education is also going to do it, where people can come into these locations and have help in filling out the census forms, so they don't have to go to an official office, government office.
The assistant centers. No? Oh. Our assistant center list that we're working on.
Yeah, so we've identified, and there probably are more out there, but we've identified 33 assistance centers, at least intended assistance centers in the city of Grand Rapids. Of course, then there are others that are going to be in other parts of Kent County. But the basics are, early next year, people will be able to go to these locations for information about the census. They might have a question about it, so they can go there and ask the question. And then, as I mentioned earlier, not everybody has a great internet connection. Not everybody, likes doing things online. So most of these centers are going to have technology available where a person could go in, get some basic help, getting into the form. Kind of like voting, there shouldn't be a person hovering over them as they do it. It's because it's supposed to be confidential. Not just from census workers, but from other people too. So, they would have, the ability to submit the form there, and the idea is just to, to increase the count by helping make it easier for people who have some barriers that these centers can overcome. Now, we do want these, and we think the 33 are geographically dispersed enough and focused on the neighborhoods where people have historically been undercounted. So the ideal is that it's within walking distance. But we'll look at that because not everybody is mobile even to walk. So
Thank you.
we will look into that.
Thank you for that idea. Are there other questions? Yeah.
One quick thing on that one.
Yes.
So, one thing that I want to actually probably ask a question and also address is there are a bunch of hubs that people can go in, submit the papers and do their census, but now you're assuming everyone speaks English and everybody knows English and they can fill up everything, right? So for someone like my community, we will need interpreters. And sometimes not only interpreters, sometimes you need someone who can actually read and write English, and who are computer savvy, who can type, we can do things. So how are you addressing that? Or are you going to hire interpreters for a specific language, or are you guys willing to partner with a community like ours? We don't have a lot of funding. We can't do our own hubs because we don't have fund enough to do that. But are you guys willing to partner? We have already started the partnership, but even on that part, willing to partner with our community so we can provide interpreters from the specific community. So
Well, your president have already agreed to put you on our list. So you are on our list as one of our centers. But we also talked about reaching out to some of the churches in your community to be centers as well, and we will talk more about it. And I will say this, for any of you that are interested in having an assistance center on December 11th, we are having a meeting downtown to the city. So before you leave tonight, make sure I get your email address. If I do not have it already, then I can make sure we send you that information, and you could attend that meeting to talk about how you can be an assistance center and what your needs will be for starting the first part of the year.
Kathy, do you remember how many languages the online
12.
form? So the online form, and then you actually can do the census this time by phone. And so there are people available by phone to take a response, I think, in even more languages. But then that form is going to be available in how many?
The actual questionnaire is going to be in 12 forms or 12 languages, and then there's going to be an additional 50 languages of explanations of the form. So if your language is not one of the 12, but yet you still need some help, you can get one of the other 50 that will answer or explain what the questions are on the questionnaire. So there's more opportunities for you to understand the questionnaire. Let me get Bo, and then I'll get the young lady in the front.
So, shameless plug, but the Hispanic Center of Western Michigan offers 85 languages: translation, interpretation, medical translation, certified, and legal. So, for any of the needs that we have, right? Speaking to the city of Grand Rapids, making sure that the United Way understands this, making sure that the Kent County understands that we offer that range of accessibility. So for any community that feels that they may need that support, the Hispanic Center of Western Michigan is not just Spanish. You may hear Hispanic Center and think it's just Spanish. 85 different languages. That's why we've reached out to persons like Ruben to be able to partner with us, right? We would love for the Bhutanese community to come in and have accessibility to the training that we do, to the different classes that we offer, so that there is no community that feels like they are not able to access this important, and not just this census, but forecasting and looking for the election, making sure that we have accessibility, making sure that no matter what your language, nationality, ethnic background is, that we are there to support those communities.
Thank you.
Yeah, somebody up there spoke about 70% was counted at the last census. One of you said something about that.
It was 77, but that was the
77?
that's the self-response rate.
Okay.
After that, then they send out the census enumerators, and
Okay.
it gets much closer to 100%. It's still not quite there, but that's why they do it. And fun fact, prior to 1970, everybody was counted in person. They didn't do the form. So everybody was counted by somebody showing up at your door prior to the 1970 census. And even more fun, the first census was done by U.S. Marshals riding around on horseback.
Oh, wow.
So imagine that. Imagine how accurate that was.
I was just wondering if any marketers would know better about how many people are in an area than the census people.
Yeah, well, and this is one of the challenges with the census. I mean, so you know, back when the census was written into the Constitution, you know, statistics existed, but it wasn't the kind of thing where opinion surveys were being done all the time, right? And now we have the ability to do, you know, these statistical estimates based on, you know, you survey a few thousand people and you get a very highly accurate picture of that population. Well, the Constitution requires an actual count for the political representation purpose we described. So we have this, you know, we have this need to do an actual count, which it's important to get very right, or get right. But we also have the ability to statistically estimate with high accuracy a population. And so what the Census Bureau does every time they do a census is they have to do the count, but then after they do the count, they do the statistical, and then they compare them, and that's how they decide, did they have an undercount or not.
Another question. Is there a question about what political party you're a member of?
No. Nope, nothing like that. Thank you for asking so we can dispel that.
Is it, okay, another question?
So when they collect the data and then they analyze it, the last time they did it, I just saw a TV show, they said Texas gained 4 seats in the House of Representatives, and states in the Rust Belt where we live tend to be losing. And so I just wanted to make the point that that's another reason why it's important to get the census count up and get accurate numbers. We have a president who is trying to suppress voter turnout, suppress democracy of the voices in this country, and they're trying to scare people away from the census because it will benefit the Republican Party and it will benefit Trump in the next election, and Betsy DeVos too. So that's my comment on it. My question is, aren't they hiring like hundreds of thousands of people still to go and collect the census data? And can someone talk about what that job is like and who does it, and what they can expect?
Well, this is one where the moderator ought to help answer the question, because Kathy has done this. But yeah, the Census Bureau is planning to hire, I don't know what percentage of the way they are through their hiring process, but they're planning to hire about 500,000 part-time workers for a few months, where most of their work would be from next April through July. And those are the people where when there isn't a response from a particular address, they send somebody to that address. And Kathy has done it.
Yeah, I just happened to be a numerator in 2010 in Flint, Michigan. That was an issue all by itself, but.
So
anyway.
you took the oath.
I did. But back then we had clipboards and paper and pen in a bag, knocking on doors, and gave us a list to work with. It was actually fun. I didn't think of the things that could have happened to me out in Flint, Michigan by myself, not knowing anything about the city. But it was actually fun. I was work when I wanted to work. If I can work 2 hours a day and 10 hours tomorrow, it just depends on how I felt. If I felt like getting up early or working late, the hours are flexible. So now, here we are, 2020. We were told they need 4,000 enumerators in Kent County for next year's census. I don't know where they are and how close they are to that 4,000, but I do know that they need a lot. They are accepting applications now. They're encouraging people to apply now so that they can get ready and prepare themselves for the training. The address, you go to your website, it's 2020census.gov/jobs. 2020census.gov/jobs. Yes. It's starting at you can make at least $14 an hour, depending on your position, because there are several positions. But the basic enumerator, I think, is $14 an hour, 58 cents a mile. So, and they pay for training. And I don't know how long the training is. So what they're asking for you now is to apply. And then the first part of the year, they'll start calling people. Early part of January, February, they'll be calling people, going through training. And then so that when the census come out, you'll be ready to start in March. So encourage. No, you have to be at least 18. And you do not have to be a citizen. So if you know anybody that's interested, that's not a citizen, encourage them to, and they're interested, encourage them to apply anyway. They're basing this on their needs, meaning if they need a translator or, whatever they need, if they have the application right there. I would rather you to apply than not to apply and miss out on that opportunity. He picked up the microphone and made me forget what I was going to say.
Yeah, maybe not a citizen, but do they have to be a permanent resident, right? A green card holder? Or
no. Joe explained to me that they do not. He's still saying have them apply.
So, okay.
Yeah.
What? Yeah.
So what is that? You have a number with a green card or something?
Usually you have to either you have to be a permanent resident to, for all that. The government wants this money, so they want to be able to track you. I think I know I say that because I went through all that process myself, being from Africa. But I think what's also important to that this is an employment opportunity. And I've worked with Joe, is it Joe, I think,
Joe.
who works with the federal government. And we always encourage people from communities that they recognize and they're familiar to apply for this, because the idea is to send individuals from those communities at the point of when, as Lou mentioned, someone hasn't taken the census. You want somebody you know or somebody who speaks your language or you're comfortable with to be at your door to answer those questions. Because sometimes there may have been, as you were saying, Saga, maybe some explanation wasn't clear, there was something. And there's cultural implications as well, as you have very well said. So someone coming from that community or has experienced that background is the best. So we encourage individuals. When we were with the Congolese community, they were very excited and said, we want you to be able to be employed. This is a job opportunity, but we want you to be the face for this. And that goes to, again, trusted networks within the community, answering that question earlier, that somehow we're caught in this situation of where, and I think Bo alluded to this, is that there's this fear that exists, but we need those funds to function. So people don't, if the numbers are not there, the money won't be there. And so you're kind of caught in this middle part, and then it goes to us as leaders, and I agree 100% with Joe, is that with Bo, that us who have kind of built the reputation in both our communities and with the community at large, have to reach out and convince those within our community that we are, in a way, trusting the systems and the processes that Lou was talking about, and that we will also be a safeguard to them as we guide and walk alongside them in this. Because at the very end, there's an important implication, both in the sense of monies that we receive, but also the sense of representation. If you want change, people have to know you're here. And if you're not here, then those who are here are going to be the one deciding those issues.
But we're going to wrap this up real quick. But I did want to go back to Ruben to ask about the African community, because he connected me with the African Resource Center, and we made some great partnerships with that. But he works with them all the time. But we've had some events with the African families. If you can, real quick, just talk about what we've done and things that we've gone through.
Yeah, so we talk about the African American community, and sometimes we don't talk about the African community, which is a ever-growing popular group that's growing, especially the Congolese. The African nations or people representing the Congolese are growing the most here, and so that demographics is growing. So how do we engage in those specific needs? Even though share the same skin color with our fellow African Americans, but when you speak about culture, that's very different. And then also educating people about culture. One organization was, they were trying to pair two Sudanese together, and on the premise that they were Sudanese. Now, if you understand that doesn't work, because if you know anything about what's happening in Sudan, the question would be, what ethnic group are they from? And there's fighting between two ethnic groups in Sudan right now. And if you do not know who those two are and you put them in the same space, it's not as if they're forgetting what's happening and then America and we're all together. That doesn't. So those cultural pieces are important. And you alluded to that very well. And I think sometimes there's a cultural incompetence of some folks on those issues. And so we want to speak to that. And so we've been to a number of African events, and one way to dispel the trust is to continuously come back. So we met with the Seventh-day Adventists, who was great on a Saturday, but we told them we would come back and we'd come back again. So I think the more time people see your face and see you're serious and you're engaged, and it's not just this one, because I'd say maybe most non-Western cultures are very relational. It's not just a one-time visit, but that way over time, then that trust will be earned. But the good thing about it, to think beyond the census, as Bo was saying, that if you're able to gain trust in this activity, then any other activities, whether it's at the federal level, communal level, anything, you can come back to that community because you have a related, solid foundation that's very relational.
Okay, if we have any other questions in the audience? Okay, let's just quick wrap this up. We'll start at the end. If you can just give your final words on your relationship with your school, the census, and how you feel, and then we'll go down the row and end it.
I don't know. I think I'm just kind of excited to hear all the everything that's in place to reach out to our community. I think I can see the importance of my role. It's kind of scary sometimes that it's such a direct conduit to a lot of these marginalized groups that we want to ensure that are counted. And so I think it's just, you see how important this work is in terms of us all working together. And it's nice to see that we can get together and get these resources, make them known, and then, just have a successful count.
Thank you.
1204 Granville Avenue Southwest. Visit us, come and share, and let's build some relationships together.
Thank you.
As a census ambassador for the city, if you have any events you would like us to be at, we're available. Let us come and speak. Sometimes we provide food, but I won't speak too much on that, Kathy. But we want to be there, and with my colleagues here, let us know where we can come in order to address those questions that many people may be having and get people to take the census.
All right, so Census Day is April 1st, 2020, so it's now less than 5 months away. So I know that date looms large for Kathy and me and the ambassadors, and so It's great to see more people getting interested in the census, so thank you for being here. Thanks to IGE for hosting this. And I think it's going to be something that's capturing more and more people's attention in a good way over the next 4.5 months. So thank you. And if there's anything you are interested in helping with, the city is certainly interested in volunteers who might be able to introduce us, Kathy and the ambassadors at events, or might want to help in some other way. So if there is some way you would like to be part of this, please contact me or Kathy, and we'd love to have you with us.
Hey, first of all, thanks to Kathy. We already have a very good relationship. We started with you, and we hope to continue that. We are, as I said, a very least resource, in terms of resources, we have very least amount of resources available. So thanks to City of Grand Rapids and United Way, we have given us a very limited amount of money to work on this. Business and Nepalese community is much larger than people can realize. A lot of people don't even know this community exists. But there are about 8,000 to 10,000 people, as I said in the beginning, in Kenwood, Grand Rapids, Wyoming, Caledonia, and the neighboring cities. We hope to get continued support, and we will do our best. BCM, or Buddhist Community of Michigan, is already working voluntarily, and will continue to do that to count 100% of Buddhist and Nepali in this community.
Thank you. I just want to say thank you to our panelists. Let's give them a hand. Come on, we can do better than that. They did an excellent job. Thank you. Thank you to IGE.